Welcome to the final installment of all the dating stuff. I have really appreciated those that feel a connection with this kind of material. I've liked their responses. I haven't liked the responses of those that have tried to call themselves challenging me. Um, but I figured the most appropriate way to conclude this is to just tear down all of the arguments against the points that I oftentimes make. So we're going to do that first, and then I will show you my correspondence with approximately 20 different women, um, varying lengths and varying patterns of ways of speaking, but it all ends the same. And that's kind of the core theme of all of this material. Now, one of the things that stalled the production of this video is a circumstance I had happened. You see, as I was planning on filming this, making it, editing it, there was a woman I came into contact with 2 months ago, back in October, and she was someone I like speaking to, but she wasn't someone that I had any romantic interest in because this is after I've reached the point where I've said, okay, this isn't going to change. Let me just talk to people for whatever reason if we have something in common. Now, after getting her phone number and having a phone call with her, um, she well, you can see it in the screenshot yourself. She, out of nowhere, tells me she's not looking for anything romantic, and it really weirds me out because up to that point we've only had political discussions, and it. You can say it points to her egotism or just her interest in trying to make herself seem more desirable than she actually is. But I tolerated. I put up with it. Um, and I'd actually given her until December 18th, a week before Christmas, to respond back, or I would include her stuff in this production. So I will refer to her for the entirety of this video as the used car saleswoman, because after I explained to her, look, I'm well past the point of going out and trying to talk to people and um, you know get women to like me. She began selling me this idea that things will change, that the last 7 years have not mattered, or rather that they were just a prelude to some magic overturn that's going to happen if you just get to this age or whatever. So she'll be brought up a lot in this video, because a lot of her responses resonate with the people that we're going to talk about. But before we do that, we're going to go into the reasons that people oftentimes bring up for why you should not quit trying. So one of the arguments that people make is that there's billions in the world and your soulmate has to be one of them. And that's true. There are 7 billion people on the earth. But ask yourself, how many are your age? How many that are your age are in a relationship already? How many that are your age use the internet? How many that are your age would want to date someone off the internet? How many that are your age would want to date someone that looks like you, that talks like you? When you start factoring in how many of those billions of people you either won't meet, or that even if you do, you won't speak to because they have something that, they're not interested in you for whatever reason, that number gets smaller and smaller. And so, look, it's a nice concept, the idea that, oh, well, there's so many people that one of them has to like you. But it's, you have to remember that you're one of what millions of guys or that wants to get with someone. So that number is going to shrink and shrink and shrink as time goes on, because progressively people get in relationships, and then when they get in one, they go to another one. You get the idea. But it is the most fact based of the claims, to give it credit, even though they don't go into the specifics and really the nooks and crannies of what all is wrong with that assertion. Second is work on yourself. Um, that's a term that is really, really, really subjective. And what I mean by that is it's nice to think that we all have some flaws or errors that deserve fixing or otherwise trying to make amends with. But the problem is, it's hard to believe that whatever problem or issue that you might think you have or that someone else thinks you have is not present in another person. So I oftentimes bring up the Jeremy Meeks situation, where this guy that got arrested, and then became, the heartthrob of all these people online. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm getting told as someone who has no record, certainly not, ever been to jail, that I need to do all of these things to make, to just maybe possibly get a date. Whereas this person who did none of those things but had a pretty face to some, a group of a large segment of women, was able to get loads of them to completely ignore or otherwise not be turned off by the fact that he was incarcerated. And look, I don't believe people who go to jail or people who have some, depending on what the charge is, should be denied happiness or some, or an equal partner. But let's not sit here and pretend as if women are some angelic beings that only want the best of the best, and the men who have the things that are so high. I mean, come on, that was a common crook by all accounts. And they certainly didn't go and try to look up his personality. If I mean, they saw a picture and they got turned on. And look, I'm not saying that's a problem, but it pokes a hole in this idea that there's certain standards that they have. Um, so also ask yourself, when I made the Why Don't Approach Women video last year, while there was a good chunk of support, there were also people who took it upon themselves to criticize the way I looked. And look, beauty's an eye of the beholder, whatever. But ask yourself this with the, work on yourself thing. Do you really believe no one's ever gotten a date with a beard or wearing the kind of shirts I do or the kind of pants I do? Do you really believe that? Or liking politics or liking, not being overly religious, that none of these people have ever been able to get a date? No one believes that because it's too, people are too subjective in terms of their wants and interests to buy into the idea that if you have a certain thing that other people don't, no one's ever had it before. And that person who's had it before was unable to get someone. That's never happened. And look, I do think that people, if they have a problem or something that is of issue, they should change it. But you would not be telling me this if this one thing was different. And that's why I stopped doing the same self-loathing that a lot of people attribute to people with this problem, because I have enough confidence in what I like, what I do, and how I act to not change it for the possibility of attracting a woman. I stay the way I am because I like the reality of who I am. And if someone else can't see that, then that's I've already spent more than a half a decade trying to show them why that is not what they should do. But again, if they pick to be blinded by what I am, that's their problem. The third one is you're only X age. So it's this way of basically discrediting any argument you have about this particular, scenario, phase, whatever you want to call it, based on how old you are. So, for example, when I was talking to the used car saleswoman, she tried to say that supposedly by virtue of being 20, um, in spite of the fact that I'd also spent 7 years having the same scenario, that was somehow undercut. And that's why she started telling me, "Oh, when you hit this magic number, it's going to change, and if you just get to this age, you're going to think differently, and then this person's going to come." Blah, 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 blah. And it always bothered me when I go and read those messages, because it's her way of saying, "I don't care what argument you make. It's not legitimate until 10,000 days passes, or 1,000, or whatever other random number she can come up with. No one else who did 7 years of anything would be seen as not knowing what they're talking about or having the points they were making be pushed back." What do I mean by that? So if someone is a rapper, say they're 20, and they've been a rapper since they were 13, you would say, well, that person's been doing this for over half a decade. They must know something by now. They must have some level of skill, something that is worth imparting. Um, and the same could be said of any other profession. It's only with this where people have this idea in their head that what you have to say doesn't matter or doesn't matter yet because of some number that we're going to use to discriminate against your position. Uh, a lot of times we talk about not wanting to get political, but let's do it. So oftentimes people will say that the reason Hillary lost to Trump was because uh, people voted third party, they didn't show up to vote, whatever, in spite of the fact that she got 2 million more votes than Trump. And oftentimes I'll retort, how many more millions of people had to show up to vote for her to pull this off? And when I get told about, you're young and blah, 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 I say, how many more dozens of chicks do I have to speak to and get the same result from for what I'm saying to resonate, to be legitimized? When we go through and we read the more than a dozen responses I've had from them or interactions I've had with them, and you see the same result happening over and over again with a little bit of variance in how you get there. Do you really believe that this is an indicator that I need to talk to another 20 of them? This was actually something that was mentioned when I spoke to the used car saleswoman. Um, and I was telling her about, why I feel disillusioned, after 7 years having the same experience. And you'll never guess what her brilliant response was that completely obliterated my arguments.
You're 20 years old. It's practically blasphemy to complain about a stagnant love life.
Got him!
She was not alone in this way of thinking. I actually have a message here from another person who I didn't make any attempt to meet romantically or make any kind of passes toward. And she writes, I think it's good to stay current with things. And I say, keep doing you. I'm 30 and my jump from 20 to 30 is quite significant. So don't be so hard on yourself. You're still young. And so am I. Think almost everyone has value and it's important to recognize that too. So again, this, just keep holding out. If you think it won't happen, it's not going to happen. Me thinking something is not going to make anyone do anything. Me thinking that someone on the street is going to give me $1 million is not going to make that person have 10 copies of 100,000 in their pocket. Me thinking that I'm going to win the lottery is not going to make me have a higher chance than the millions that play it every year. So that is not real. All right, on this one, I said, do you want Skype my phone number? I'll remedy your sickness with my comedy. She says, tell me a joke, then I'll choose based on how funny you are. I told her the joke. I get her Skype. Literally the entire time we speak, all she wants to do is hear more jokes. Now, you'll have those who are of the lesser practicality who will say, it would have worked if you just kept telling her jokes. But again, they have a one-track mind that doesn't allow themselves to bring themselves to the position of the person who is the approacher. So I'm supposed to come up with loads and loads of jokes for this person's amusement in the hope that they might reciprocate, which they didn't, so it was a waste of time. But again, they have this insta-fix thing where just if you had just done what she said you would do, it would have all changed. Yeah, keep believing that. All right, this one, she put up a message, said I was doing. You can read it for yourself, but it's of significance because this is another person I approached. They're a big deal, or there's something that's worth including here because just like the used car saleswoman, they tried to tell me, oh, if you just keep holding out, if you just keep waiting, if you just keep holding, they all have this thing about someone for everyone, and then just keep trying. It's going to eventually happen. No one wants to face the reality that no one is guaranteed a partner. All right, this is another one. She concedes that a lot of women, especially the ones pursuing higher education, are interested in substance rather than superficialities, like someone's appearance. I'm sure you do contribute with much other than the way you look, and I'm sure that as long as you're cleanly, someone is paying attention to your other qualities. And like you said, despite critiquing yourself someone's out there find you attractive. So again, she's trying to sell me this box of goods. Oh yeah, someone out there likes you. I know it must be hard to not attract the attention of women you are interested, but I think that older women show interest in you is a huge compliment. Obviously, they feel you have a lot offered. She means to say a lot to offer despite your age. I see. Well, what is that they say haters gonna hate, right? I'm an eternal optimist, so my point of view is that you just haven't met the right person yet. Again, uh, doing just like the used car saleswoman. This person's gonna come around eventually, and she's gonna be so great and so wonderful, and walk on water and make all the ones in the past be completely different. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this goes on a little bit longer. Um, I'm the one who sends the last message. She tries to challenge me on why I don't want to be with someone who's overweight. And look, I'll admit that is a superficial position. Um, but hey, humans are flawed. We all have some level of standards. And ironically enough, I kept lowering mine over and over and over again, to get with a group of people that, it seems intellectually just aren't there yet. Good chunk of them anyway. So you're saying that you'd rather pretend like overweight girls didn't exist instead of just being happy, friendly to everyone, maybe being surprised at what you'd find is hiding underneath those few extra pounds. I'm not saying you should go for, I'm just saying you should be open minded. Looks don't last anyway, and weight can be lost. So again, you know, lower your standards, take everyone and everything, and hope that someone likes you back. Jesus Christ. Instead of eternal optimist, she's an eternal idiot. One of the things I failed to mention during the opening is that a lot of these women, it seems, can't keep their attention on someone for more than a couple of days or weeks, which is why I've had typically longer relationships, platonic, obviously, with, other males. But it's a thing where just both of us have enough commitment to want to keep speaking over and over. You set up a date, a time, whatever, and then just, have a conversation. With them, it's like this thing where it resets every couple of weeks. This one was from last year, and we had become affiliated with each other after she posted about where she lived and around the same area. And she is initially happy with that first response. I'm gonna skip to the last part because I'm telling you, like when you think about people that make you mad, this isn't one of them. She didn't upset me. It's just I'm upset by the fact that she seemingly just dropped it out of nowhere. Her last response is, "Did you stay up for the whole health care thing last night? I was channel surfing and I saw something, Capitol Hill, 1:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time." Again, I'm pretty when it comes to anything political, so I was pretty surprised to see Washington still awake. I wake up, I was all about the healthcare bill. I mean, I guess it makes sense why it was so late into the night. Anyway, I've been well, just came back from Mexico. I was there for a birthday trip. Now I'm back in the office. Such fun times. What about you? Are you taking summer classes or anything? So when you read that response and you know that that's her last message to me, what about that is indicating of I'm sick of you, I don't want to speak to you anymore? And you see my answer right there. Um, it answers her questions. It is direct, and then nothing. So this is another pattern where you're not mad and you don't think these people are stupid, right? But you question why none of them seem to be able to hold on to talking to one person for more than a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. They just fizzle out so quickly. All right, this is another one that put her list of demands that was longer than the Declaration of Independence. You can see my response. She talks about who she is, a little bit about animals and whatnot. And this one's really weird because she actually gives me her Discord, and when we talk over there, you get pretty much the same thing where you send someone a message and they don't respond, and then you ask them on the other website what happened, and then they don't respond. So it's another one of those things where that's not someone I think is dumb, but it piles on after a while. Just that same kind of, you thought it was going to go one way and then it goes the other because the other person doesn't care to say anything back. It was just another one that was approached because of the closeness of location. Starts asking about where I am and all that stuff. But again, after a couple of messages, it fizzles out. And you ask yourself, what did you do? What could you have done? And the important thing to take away from these type of interactions is that they're not based really around me or the other person getting sick of at least I don't think. But when you put them along with the other ones, it becomes an avalanche of just people having short attention spans and not being committed to a dialogue. And I know it's a short attention span because if you go over to her page, she just posted 13 hours ago. This was a conversation of a year ago, and she's still on that same website, still trying to meet men and getting the same result. This is another one of the political ones. She, was seeking people who were like-minded or interested in this topic. I respond to her. Another example of the person seeming to be interested at first, then it goes a complete opposite way of what you thought it would. Again, usually not by an argument or you causing some kind of conflict with them, but we know it's a lack of attention span because just like with the other one, if you go on her page, she just posted a few hours ago. And look, I'm not in the business of bringing that up to say go mess with this person, which is why I have the names blocked off. But I am saying we know it's based more around not caring about talking to me as an individual than, oh, I just lost my password, because they're still going on there. This is another example of the political ones. She asked about my belief system on one topic. Says, okay, we'll get along. What's your name? I tell her what it is. I try to speak to her a little bit more. She doesn't say anything back. You go on her page. She's still active on that site, meaning that she didn't lose her password. She just doesn't care on talking to you. And look, that's not, I'm not necessarily upset by that, but, let's not pretend as if we have a bunch of people who are all innocent babies. I swear, when I was speaking to the used car saleswoman, she tried to make it seem as if anybody and everybody just needs to be forgiven and given the benefit of the doubt and have a free pass and not be called for what they are, which is a bunch of people who don't care. This person has not responded to me in almost a year. You said, I think it says 12 months. So you can tell when you go on, and you, especially when you go on their page now and see they've been active in the last couple of hours, they're not ever going to. And I'm not holding out hope that they will, but I call it what it is. This person is not interested in continuing a dialogue. And it's not based around learning who I am or me doing something that, made them angry. It's just they don't have the attention span to keep this thing going. Anyways, in the first couple of messages, this one seems to be enjoying herself. She says LEO, which is LOL with theoretically, she maybe made her own words. I'm not sure. People are getting all kind of creative nowadays. But you see that she writes that she spends most of her time playing games. Um, and when I mention, I'm willing to adapt to what you do to try to make this work a little bit more, she says, haha, I'm not trying to force people into doing anything they wouldn't do. I don't know. What things do you like? I tell her what I like. And I, name all the stuff I'm into. And she says she's not interested in any of that or into those things anymore. Keep in mind, reread that part of my response. I said politics, writing, reading, walking, music. Um, that's not one thing. And I'm hard pressed to believe that those five things of her not being interested in equate to the one thing that she told me of what she liked. In conclusion, I asked her about, the early days of herself or whatever, how she got into gaming. And I get pretty much an itty bitty answer to that. And then no responses afterward. But, you try to get to know these people, um, and they silently proclaim, you try to get to know these people and they silently proclaim how disinterested that they are. And, a lot of, again, we have this thing where people go, well, maybe she just stopped logging into her account. You go on there again, her last post on this site was 7 hours ago. So, we're talking about a conversation that she's had 12 months to respond to, and she's not going to. And again, I'm not mad, but just point that out because keep giving people the benefit of the doubt because of what gender they are is a dangerous road. Okay, your post was certainly very thought provoking, but it told me virtually nothing about you. I want to know the hobbies and habits of, I use your username. Um, Talks about her antidepressants and being drowsy. Not wanting to be rude by not replying before going to sleep. She describes her. I don't want to because some of this stuff is just too. That's the problem with doing the screenshot stuff. It's hard to be fully transparent because even though you don't know who these people are, you still there's certain things you don't want to read and talk about. But when you get toward the end, she says, "LOL, I always sleep and whenever I can. Totally not a morning person. Not sure if you've noticed, but I don't live where you live, so I'm not really sure of what this government shutdown that you're talking about. I told her I can tolerate this, but when you can read the rest of that response for yourself. But think about this. Her final message to me before this whole thing goes blank is saying, um, you know, in a cheerful seeming attitude, what about my response before that, which you can see, or after that, would cause her to say, all right, I'm done talking to this person? I have to admit, this is one of the more stranger cases because when I think about how many ones that were on Reddit were successfully removed off the site, as in, you take the conversation to places like Skype, Discord, that there's about a good 7 or 8 of those people, but ones that I actually obtained the number of and spoke to um, through text, probably just this one on that particular site. And and when you read her response, I sincerely apologize. I do not mean to be a jerk and ignore you. It's hard to communicate when I'm in audit mood because I'm so busy and stressed out, and life just gets away from me. I'm having an extremely difficult audit, and my company is about to be written up, so it's been all consuming, unfortunately. Would you mind texting? I would reply certainly on a more daily basis than on here. I do want to make clear that I do want to talk more and get to know you better. So when I see that kind of response from someone, I'm not really convinced that I'm so quote unquote antisocial or unable to form relationships that I wouldn't be able to get people to that point. You're going to see that several times in the messages that are shared on here or that are made public, by virtue of being included here. But let's really focus on the part I do want to make clear that I do want to talk more and get to know you better. That doesn't sound like someone who's disinterested, even if her actions don't match her rhetoric. I want to get to know you better, but I'm not responding for days or weeks. So, I still give her the benefit of the doubt because I do accept that people, and I guess that's the thing, the difference between me and a lot of my critics. They don't get that people have flaws or errors. And I certainly saw a flaw in her inability to respond to my messages for such a long time, but I still accepted that she had things that she had to do that were not relating to me. And it's why I can't really feel bad about my involvement in this in particular interaction. So when I read her response, I'm not really convinced I don't have the ability to form interactions or, make a woman want to get to know me. Like I said, I've been doing this for 7 years. I have to have some level of skill. Now it doesn't always land, admittedly, or nor do I consider myself to be particularly talented. But you don't get that kind of response without doing something that made the person want to get to know you. I think most of us, even people that call me ugly and say that I'm uh, whatever, would be able to admit to. I hope. So during our text conversations, and you can actually see this reflected in the message that's up right now. March 20th, March 24th, no response from her. So I say, hey, look, I'd have figured my lack of responses would have tipped you off by now. And her responses are, sorry, I just realized I was in the middle of replying back and never did. I am very absent minded and forgetful, like to the point that I lose my keys and phone and wallet constantly. Calls herself brilliant, just really forgetful. I actually need to get seen for that. And she apologizes for it. And as I read this, I'm reminded of what is so frustrating about talking to these people. Because see, look, the reason this one stings so much is that a lot of times when we talk about women on this channel, you mention their inability to see faults within themselves or ever concede anything or try to make something work. And this one, all the way up until the end, seemed convinced. She was so different. She's a person who could concede that she'd made a mistake, that she wanted to keep trying. And I never doubted that up until toward the end. So she makes a pledge, um, because initially she's saying, "Oh, I don't want to have a phone conversation." She says, "At this point, we can speak on the phone." And that same day of that March 24th thing, um, I tried to get her to set a date unsuccessfully. But in subsequent days, she's asking about a headache I have. And another response that is significant, where I ask her what her opinion of me is, and she says, "You seem like an interesting and nice person." Um, was she lying? Now remember, this is in that same part of March, so it's only a few days later that she says that. Anyways, I sent her a picture of me. And within 2 days of saying, "You seem like a nice, interesting person," she says, "I just came out of confession and meditation, and I can do the same. And I can do the same conclusion that a relationship right now isn't setting well with my soul. Still, just the thought of trying to be in one isn't setting well with me. Nothing really. It's all internal to me. So she admits right there, I had no role to play in her little delusion that, you're not able to do this. You're not able to do this because you don't want to do it, not because you can't do it. I actually ask her, I'm being shoved out over something that I didn't do. Because I'm not just telling the truth, nothing more, nothing less. I don't want to give you hope and not go through with it. And so she says she's not saying no to doing a call, that she's sorry. And she admits that she does not particularly want to speak to me. Can you imagine how much of a slap in the face it is to go from, you seem like a nice, interesting person, and again, someone that she said in this other message, I do want to make it clear that I do want to talk more and get to know you better. To to be honest, not particularly when asked, do you want to talk to me? For what it's worth, I say to her, effort is for naught. She says, for what it's worth, I am truly sorry. It's my fault. She says, I have tried, maybe not relative to your standards, but I have. I have tried at certain times, but I do fault when I get very busy. I don't want to try. That's the point. I have realized I don't want to be in any sort of relationship or pre-relationship at this moment in time. So this is me mocking. And now that I've come out of confession, meditation, hallucination, I conclude shared our best shared course is to drop the pre-relationship label. She says, "Look, I am being firm when I say I don't want to engage in any sort of relationship with you. At best, we are mere acquaintances. I wish you the best. Even hard experience doesn't teach you anything. I leave you here to continue to succumb to your fears and short-sighted stance. I wish you nothing but the worst because I didn't care anymore." You know what? She had every right to cut that thing off when she did, to hell, to never even do it to begin with. But you're not going to tell me after I've spent weeks trying to talk to you, putting up with you, not answering any of your stuff, and being fed a bunch of verbal diarrhea that you're interested, that I shouldn't get pissed off when you do a complete 360 within days of saying how interested you are, you do that. And I'm not supposed to get mad. That one was still someone that I don't know what else, and that's kind of the overarching theme of this content. In a lot of instances where you see these people who, now that I've sent messages to and they don't respond, what more could I have done? You look at the one right here where she, is saying, I want to get to know you better. You're a nice, interesting person. And then days later, after talking with me over and over again, um, and not indicating that she was getting upset or angry or bothered by us speaking to each other, cuts it off entirely. What else can I do? That's why it feels like this curse, this hex that I can't break out of. And it's not being put on by me not talking to them. It's being put on by me talking to people who all come to the same conclusion, no matter what I do. If you speak to one for a few messages, you get the same result. If you sit here and you write to this person and wait for them, and then every couple of days say, "Hey, how you doing?" You get the same result. The only difference is the year, the age of the person, and how long it is between them saying no. That's it. And that's been exemplified by the responses that I've read here. This one says she's done some long distance relationships in the past. I talk about mine. She asked me for her, or rather, she gives me her Discord. We send like two messages on it, and she stops responding. Another example of a person that you look back at this stuff and you go, what made them upset, and or to where they weren't interested. And to her credit, I don't see where she's been any more active on here, but it still is aggravating. This last one, what books do I write? Talks about good genres. Um, Talk about coming up with a story together. And this is how weird people can just completely shift over in 5 seconds. Now, you're going to read a section of this, and I'm not even going to bother putting my voice to what is written, on my part and her part. But you can clearly tell this is sexual in nature. All the lashes I want to give you in this, that stuff. And look, people have that kind of banter all the time, but you can't tell me that you're going to just sit there with a person that you have no interest in and say that to them. And that person supposed to not think it's sexual, not think there's anything behind it, not think you might want to do something with them. And so when you see the response right here, where I ask, do you ever intend for us to hear each other's voice? And she says, maybe, I don't know, man, I'm in college and have a job and friends to hang out with. Really ask yourself what that has to do with being asked if you want to have a call with someone. I'm not asking her to marry me. I'm just saying, do you want to have a call? And in response to that, you're going to tell me about all the things that you have going for you. So you can't get them to commit to anything, not even a conversation, much less a date. Anyway, she says I'm being too serious for her. I don't buy it. And she actually sends me her Reddit, where she says to me, "Oh, well, I'm dating this guy," and I said, "Wait a second. So you mean to tell me you sat in my inbox and you wrote this? Let's call it what it is: sexually charged crap for nothing, just for fun, for giggles." And I told her I just need certification that the last 25 days has been a waste of time. She says, "Thought we were just going to be friends. Don't need to." So she can call me out of my name and insult me, and then I'm the bad guy. I'm the villain. But you as the this is what I'm talking about. You as the man have to go through all of these false flags, all of these lies, all of this, subterfuge to make people pretend as if they're interested in you, and then not get pissed when it doesn't go your way over and over and over again. I genuinely posed the question: how many of them do I have to talk to before this stuff is, my perspective is legitimized? 100, 200, 300, 400. I sent another message and I said, "So now I can confirm that you wasted my time, even as I insisted to you that I was willing to leave at any point if you preferred someone else and you told me not to, and are now upset with me just because I don't want to settle for being your friend, a role that would solely entail me hearing about your happiness with another man." Think about just slapping the face of this. You sit here and you think, "Oh, this person likes me, or they at least like talking to me in this kind of manner," and then right after thinking that you're getting somewhere with them, you do the face reveals, you have this little sexually charged chat, they go and get with some other guy, and oh, let's be friends. And screw that. Told you, I don't let myself. If there's one other thing I can brag about, and I wouldn't even brag about this, but I don't go for the friend zone thing. The second somebody doesn't appear appealing in the way I want them to be, you're dumped. I have enough friends. Okay, this one screenshots to laugh at, boring people. She talks about getting over 90 messages. I tell her about the stuff that's, it's again another instance of, you think, oh, maybe we're going to have a good dialogue conversation. It ends abruptly. And you just have to go on to another one. And then if you say, oh, I'm done after having the same thing happen 30 times, people tell you, oh, no, just keep trying, keep trying. This is if she had lasted longer, she'd be more deserving of a nickname. Let's just dub her the neutral time waster. So neutral time waster posts a thing on Reddit. I respond back. She says, I just only want to have text, which, I've been over this before. I don't know anyone I've ever met where me and them gained a serious relationship just by sending each other a bunch of sentences, not even like a paragraph where you get to know each other in some big letter, just a sentence here, sentence there, sentence everywhere. Um, I play ball for a little while to show what it'll look like. Ask her what she thinks. I'm not into rating. So neutral time waster doesn't want to admit whether she thinks you look good or bad. And again, we're on here to meet someone that you might think some romantic of. I mean, just face it. People, when you see them, you know who you'd sleep with. Sorry, that's just reality. Um, obviously, opinion. The person's personality will come into play in a lot of cases, but you get the idea that there are people who, when you see them, you go, "Wow, that's someone who's really attractive." Ooh. Um, So, I gave you my answer. I didn't line with yours, so I left. So, okay, she says, I gave you my answer, didn't line up with yours, so I left you to your devices. I said, the my way or the highway doctrine. Can you name a single person you ever gained an affinity for just by texting them and never hearing their voice? She said, I never said anything about my way or no way. I just basically said I don't feel comfortable talking on the phone. If you can understand that, then I don't want to continue correspondence with you. So, which I didn't respond to that anyway, so that she got what she wanted. But you see how they're not even self-aware. So when I have people who come on here and they try to mock me over not being able to get with a woman, I'm self-aware to know enough that, yeah, it's true, I haven't been able to get someone, but I'm also confident enough to say, well, wait a second, the same thing has happened to thousands of other people, which is why this stuff got as popular as it did. This is a person who is saying, I will not communicate with you unless you speak to me in the way I want to be spoken to, through text. That is my way or the highway. If I said, for example, if you call me dude, I will end our communication. You would say, okay, that person wants, you know, their way on that one. Um, their way or the highway. There's no ultimatums, no exceptions, just a done deal if it doesn't go my way in that particular instance. So it's not hard to see where my position comes from. But this is someone who turned their brain off and said, you know, uh, I'm not doing what I'm actually doing. Shut up, leave me alone. And she got her way. All right, so this one, I start off talking about ghosting. She says, no, yeah, this is kind of boring when people do that. I can, however, sometimes do it, but mostly it's because there is no conversation to begin with. I did not ghost. Yeah. And that's someone that literally I say that to her after she doesn't respond for a couple of days. I did not ghost. Guess I just didn't feel the need to reply. My life is a pretty boring, same thing over and over. Because maybe it's not your job to entertain me. Trying you out how? And again, these people act stupid on purpose. So trying someone out is getting to know that person, whether or not you would talk to them, with regularity or just at all post those first couple of exchanges. But do you see how they turn their brains off? They go, "Oh, what do you mean? What are you saying?" You know exactly what I'm talking about, and she knew exactly what I was talking about. Um, maybe, but we haven't really clicked. Maybe, but we haven't really talked here. So unsure about trusting you. fights with her boyfriend. Oh, here she gets upset about me waiting 5 days to write to her. And I literally did that because it took her 5 days to respond to me. But think to yourself this, you see in her post, she says she fought with her boyfriend. So if you have, and I actually did bring this up now that I'm remembering more of it. If you have a partner, why would you be trying to make friends with people of the opposite sex? And again, not like a thing of, oh, I just met this one person and, me and them click. I'm talking about putting up an ad. Hey guys, ignore the fact that I'm with somebody. Let's talk too. Women can do anything, man. If I was with someone and I said, hey, women, come talk to me in loads and loads, I would get called a cheater in 2 seconds. And if she was so happy with her relationship, which is what I bring up in these messages, why would she be looking for another guy to talk to? She says she wants the action of someone that usually gets. She calls herself someone that usually gets along better with dudes. Do you really believe, again, from the perspective of a man, if you are with a woman, that she's going to sit there and go, "Oh, okay, it's all right. That you go and talk to, you get along better with women and you hang out with only women. That's okay." Do you really believe that? Like, that's what I'm saying. When people just use their brains and stop trying to give the woman, in this instance, this one, the benefit of the doubt over anything and everything, you start to see the cracks in the arguments that are made in favor of them. It makes no sense to be in a happy, presumably, relationship with someone and then go post up an ad looking for people of the same sex to go and talk with you. It doesn't make sense. And she said, stop talking to her. And I did. Now, back in July of last year, I met a woman that I've mentioned her a couple of times by in regards to a condition that she had. And I always bring it up because she's someone that really showed me that when I talked about lowering my standards, it wasn't when I say that it has implications that I don't think people get. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being having polio, so confined to a wheelchair, being blind. But those aren't the kind of things I would look for in someone I like. So when I met this person, they were able to, they were talented at art in spite of their condition. I was impressed. So that was someone that, was trying to go somewhere with themselves, or so I thought. Anyways, we know each other for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And the exchange goes like this. I asked her if she would ever want to, have a family, for example. Just theoretical. And keep in mind, I don't know much about this person, so it doesn't strike me as strange to ask someone that thing. And she says, "Oh wow, she says maybe if I met the right guy, but I doubt it." So I said, "Well, may I ask what qualities you like in men?" She said, "I like guys who are nice and smart and nerdy." And I said, "Well, then I called upon to ask if you feel I've embodied any. Well, then excuse me. Well, then I'm called upon to ask if you feel I've embodied any of those traits during our dialogue." She says, "Yes, definitely. You seem very smart and nerdy, and you're probably the nicest person I've spoken to online. You're also very easy to talk to, and I don't think it's just because we're communicating by text. I've talked to you more than anyone online and most people in public for that matter." Now, when you hear that, and you think about a lot of the responses, like, oh, this person's antisocial, oh, this person doesn't have any friends, oh, this person can connect anybody, and you think about the other one who said you are a nice person, I want to get to know you better, and do you really believe that it's impossible for me to connect with anyone? Do you buy that when you hear this stuff and you're seeing it? And so I said, well, I like to believe that I don't judge, and I certainly find you appealing to my interest. But that begs the question, Were I to ask you out, would you turn me down? She says, I probably would go out with you if I could, as I wish there was some way for us to speak by voice. She asks what state I'm in. So when you read that, you're convinced, okay, that person has some level of interest back. That's actually one of the most direct omissions I've ever received from a woman. And you think, oh, that might be going somewhere. So 11 days later, with absolutely no content in between, which is significant because a lot of people say, "Oh, you said something that made her mad." No, no, there's nothing in between that interaction and this interaction. You said I was handsome, and I said you were beautiful. What are we going to do about that? She says, "I don't think we can do anything about it." I said, "I was thinking we find out more about each other, see if you might want to become a couple, what other hobbies you have apart from drawing." She says, "You are a nice guy, but I'm not really looking for a boyfriend now. I'd rather have a friend than a boyfriend. I'm sorry, and I hope you understand." I said, "I get it." She says, "We're still friends, right?" No, we were not. But do you see how, when you look at the individual interactions I have, look, there are some where nothing happens. There are some where there's no false flags. There are some where people just come off from the start not interested. But to get that close, that far, in a lot of instances, and have these people say, "I want to get to know you, I want to talk to you, I want to, do something, whatever," and then to have them just completely do a 360, it's the kind of stuff that makes you just say, "Screw it." It doesn't make you hate the people who do. It doesn't make you want to go out and do anything. It just makes you say, "You know what? I've been really thrilled to excesses on this stuff and." Uh, into believing it could change, and it's always been a false flag. So I don't want any more false flags. I just want to, throw in the white flag and deal with things that I know will happen because it's up to me to make them happen. You see, I was fully committed to wanting to meet this person, beyond the internet. But she wasn't, and I had to accept that, and I tried to move on. And all the messages that you've seen up to now are all following that period. And that we're talking about, or rather, excuse me, all the messages you've seen up to now, except for I think the first or second one, were all after that period. So a majority of stuff that you've seen is me saying, okay, well, that person didn't work, even though I got so close. Let's see if this goes differently. And it didn't. It didn't. But I want to pay close attention to the one that I described earlier, that I spent, I spent about a month. I spent 3 months talking to, because in that time I concluded to myself, well, this person, they're interested in me, and they, of course, weren't after the first week, at least romantically, but they still wanted to communicate and be friends. They said, "Oh, I'll think about changing my mind." Unfortunately, I don't have screenshots to show you, because a lot of this person actually liked to speak by voice, which is, was refreshing by that point. But you still get the same result. So again, this person is significant because I was told I showed too much interest. And you can actually see in those last responses that it was the person messaging me over and over again, getting upset that I wasn't sending them anything back. And it was day after day. So either we both showed too much interest, or, that person showed, and again, I was already sick of them. I don't think it was too much interest. I just think I was done with this particular individual. But clearly, the interest that I did show was not enough to ward her off from wanting to still speak to me. Make of that what you will. Now, this one, I think, is very fitting to come toward the end, because we want to talk about false flags. I mean, this is like the mother of just red herring. Now, I met her after she started posting comments on my stuff. But the first thing she ever wrote to me was that I was supposedly um, looking for the best of the best, and I couldn't believe it because, as I mentioned you before, I have a list of standards, and they were displayed at the beginning of this video. So it's literally the exact opposite of what I've been doing. That is being told to me is my strategy by a person who's never met me, which is the problem with people who've never met me making conclusions about me. But whatever, they'll do it until the day I die, and even after that. So she complimented me, said I'm handsome, and actually couldn't respond, but it made me upset to where I actually did a video about it because again, it's the reverse of what is actually the case. So she says, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to insult you in my comment. I was not trying to be rude. Um, and then after a while, we start exchanging private messages. And she says, all I was stating was that you are a handsome, well-spoken, genuine young man. From viewing your comments, there are several from females that are also stating the same thing. So from listening to your video and then reading the comments and noticing that you are easy on the eyes, I came to the conclusion that perhaps you have a certain type, and because of this, you are maybe missing, even subconsciously, looks and other signs of interest from women. I really did not mean to offend you, and I will continue watching and comments on your video. So again, read that, which is on the screen for you, and tell me that I'm this undesirable person who has, I'm so ugly, have no redeeming qualities whatsoever, or whatever I have that's redeeming is not enough to entice people multiple times in the past 2 years. Tell me that. So, anyways, the downward spiral begins in late November of last year. She talks about changing her account. Um, all of her working. It starts asking me about what I'm specifically looking for in a relationship. Yeah. Talks about herself some more. I think the best example of how the red herring really takes effect is to just skip to the part that just doesn't make any sense to this day. Like sometimes I actually will go back in my email and just read this because it's that outrageous. And I look at the timestamp on that stuff. I miss those quick replies. I guess when I talk to you now, you have to wait 3 months. Anyways, the last message to me reads, Hi, Justin. I hope you are well. I'm going to be on. No, scrap that. Let's. Okay. So let me read this to you, and then we'll see if you now get why this stuff was frustrating enough for me to just say screw it and give it up altogether. Well, babe, you've gave it your all, and you can't give more than that. Please let me know as soon as it gets graded. Good luck, babe. She's referring to a test I took that I informed her of that I was having some trouble with. You have seen what I look like, and soon you'll be able to hear me too. Although I fear you may struggle to understand me, as my Scottish accent is very strong, and people that aren't Scottish usually struggle to understand what I am saying. I will be sure to speak English, not Scottish. LOL XX. I said, now I'm going to remember this last Sunday is Judgment Day. The day was marked by me taking a test one right after waking up and another during the evening. I think I'd be able to comprehend. I doubt your accent is strong to the point of confusion. This voice chat would be on Google Hangouts or Skype. So she doesn't say anything for 3 days. Which, sometimes she'll be busy, so I didn't think much of it. Her response, again, there's nothing in between her saying, I'm, soon going to speak to you by voice. Hi, Justin. I hope you are well. I'm going to be honest, Justin. I just don't think we are right for each other for many reasons. That's why I wanted to see how we would get along, how we would get on as just friends first. And I'm glad I did before any feelings were involved. I hope you find what you're looking for, Justin. I wish you all the best with everything. So basically, goodbye forever. But even as I was telling the used car saleswoman about the this particular interaction, I kept emphasizing to her, people change their minds all the time. We all have something we thought looked good that we later on have some different opinion of. But when you see a person say, I'm excited to speak to you by voice, and then within days of that go, let's just stop talking altogether without there being anything in between those two opinions, what can the person who's being uh, ostracized do about that? I don't know what else I could have done in regards to that particular interaction, as with the other one I showed you earlier, that went from Reddit to text messages about her hallucinations or whatever, and pre-relationships and all that nonsense. What could have been done on my part to make that person not come to the conclusion that made them say, okay, let's just say screw this and not even bother going any further? So I also wanted to include the head suspect herself, the used car saleswoman, and her quick shift. Okay, so you see that it's November 23rd. I say I'm seeking a social call. She says, "Oh, okay, soon." And then within 2 weeks of no responses from her, I just ask her, "How you doing?" I think a pretty normal thing to ask somebody that you call yourself concerned with, or an acquaintance, whatever. I said, "This is anarchy," in reference to her not leaving anything back. Um, and I'd actually said something similar to that prior to us having that big dialogue about my relationship background, where I was like, oh my God, what happened? Or do you not want to speak to me anymore? Because it took her a day to respond to me. And I know these people have their phones out and they do all kind of stuff with their devices, so I'm not really convinced that I couldn't have gotten a quicker response. But you do see a difference. I complained because a day went by. This time I let 2 weeks go by and didn't say anything. And I let that go by because people will tell you, you showed too much interest. You were so obsessive and possessive, and you were always trying to send her a message. You literally see right before you November 24th, December 8th. So her response is, don't worry, it's the beginning of the end. And at that point, she doesn't send me any messages anymore, just nothing. I called her about a week after that. She didn't pick up. She knows my number. She knew who I was. So this is again, you look at how there's nothing in between. Haha, okay, soon, and don't worry, it's the beginning of the end. No interactions, basically. And you ask yourself, what would cause somebody to go from, oh, I'm going to speak to you soon, to goodbye forever? And that's the point I've been trying to make. And look, I try to play a role of accepting good things about people. So like with the one that was, sitting here and not, admitting that she was extremely forgetful, she still didn't seem to me to be a bad person, or, someone that if she were actually interested in me wouldn't be a suitable partner. She seemed nice for the most part. Again, I'm just saying that based off of what I observed in the month or so that I spoke to her. But we're talking about a group of people who, it's like they have something in their heads that says, "Hey, I'm going to talk to this person for a couple of weeks or months, and then after I'm done, getting whatever I want out of them, whether it's somebody to talk to because I'm bored or just some cash or whatever, I'm going to throw them away." I don't know what else I could have said to the used car saleswoman, the pre-relationship person, or this one that said I had such high standards, and I then zeroed in on to where I was trying to talk to her to make them not do their sudden shift from wanting to speak to me to, goodbye forever. And that's been the overarching theme. When I've met plenty of people who, because I said my standards earlier, did not meet what I wanted out of a partner in terms of how they looked. But I've along the way accepted what they were, because even though they weren't physically what I wanted, they had qualities that were redeeming enough for me to say, okay, well, that's kind of a thing that I superficially am into, but they're still someone I like to talk to, and they still look fine to me. Um, and it drives me crazy that to this day I still have people who say, you approach someone that was too attractive, you talk to someone that was too attractive, and you know that these people don't know what they look like. You know that in a lot of instances you don't even know what they look like because it's online, but you're being told that because they have a confirmation bias that they're trying to put on you, which is the idea that all of these people are above your league, or that all the people you talk to are above your league, and you should just accept whatever comes your way. And if you fight for anything, you're an idiot. It's all a scam. Talking to women, or rather going out and initiating a dialogue with the woman, is a scam. If they like someone, they will start it with them. I know because I've seen them do it. This one that, the one that did the goodbye forever, after saying, I want to hear your voice, she came on my stuff. She said, you're attractive. I wanted to talk to you. And we did, up until she got tired of me and threw me away, got pumped and dumped. Um, a lot of times I've been asked, what do you identify as? And I always say I'm just a person who uh, liked a group of people that didn't like me back. No matter which one of them I talked to, no matter where they were from, no matter how I met them, they just didn't like me back. And I'm also a person who still to this day will say, my position is, if a man thinks a woman is worth talking to, go talk to them. But that if the person does not reciprocate his feelings, I don't want him to think he's now, a horrible person that needs to change who he is, or else he'll never get someone or whatever. Because you see that all of these people that have had this problem, when there are loads and loads of them, which is why this stuff is as popular as it is, are not all like me. They're not all into politics. They're not all into um, what I wear or how I speak or anything that I'm into in some cases, but they're still reaching the same conclusion. And that tells you there is a systemic problem with their female equivalents. If all of these guys, including myself, can go out and find multiple people that they say, wow, that person is, actually worth talking to, I want to do something with them, and then still get turned down by loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of them, that's a problem with the other group. The one that doesn't accept any of these people for who they are, but then wants to be accepted for everything she is. I just want to throw this in here because I forgot to include it earlier. One of the counter arguments I'll get for um, all of what's been shown here is that, oh, well, those were online. That means you have to go and approach in person. Um, keep this in mind. I only transitioned to the internet as my main place of meeting women because I had spent at that point 4 years talking to multiple women. I'm going to say it was about 15 to 20 of them, and getting nowhere, and being told by others, hey, if you go online, there's way more people, and you can meet them and have the same interests, and yep. So the transition to the internet only happened after I experienced turmoil with interactions in person. Also, there are those who will say, oh, but this is only 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 people. That's not, keep in mind, those are just the ones that actually responded and I can show you a back and forth with. If we go into the, all the different ones where I said hello and they just don't respond, whether it's on Tinder or Reddit or any of these other websites, this thing would be 4 or 5 hours long of me just saying, I wrote hello, she said nothing. I wrote hello, she said nothing. So that's important because it really shows you why it may seem as if it's just a few examples, but there are way more. It's just when it's the in-person stuff, I don't have screenshots of it because in some cases it was a cell phone that I've long, since gotten rid of, or it was a person who I never had the number of, so there were no text messages or exchanged because they very quickly turned me down. I actually used to think before I went online that there was something wrong with me for having this problem, this trouble. But I've mentioned a couple of times before, my best friend, who I've known all my life, has the same issue, along with another person I speak with that, we met much later. And, a lot of times when I would talk to him, I would ask him, what do people say to you when, they hear about you having this problem? They bring up his height. He's 5'7", and I'm 6'2". And I always say to him, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where people find one thing and they try to make it become the reason. And there's loads of reasons for why this is happening to so many people. Um, some having to do with me. Some people don't like the way I look. Hey, I accept that. Some people don't like the way I speak, my positions, whatever. But there are some people that don't despise it or don't dislike it. They just have so many other options that it doesn't really matter what I do. They're always going to have loads and loads of other people to pick from. And when I'm told about the need to still go out there, it's almost like saying, "Hey, look, we know you have a 1 in a million or billion chances of winning the lottery, but just keep going and doing it and playing it until for the rest of your life, and then maybe someday someone somewhere will eventually say something that is reassuring." And it's not happening. It hasn't happened. I have not seen a single thing written by a person online in the 3 years from which I made this content, or rather 2 years as far as last year making a bunch of it, this year making a bunch of it. So in these last 2 years of actively talking about this stuff, I haven't seen anyone write anything that I actually thought was worth a damn. There's one guy, his name is Base Zeus, and I give him credit because he said you shouldn't write paragraphs to women, or just write a bunch of stuff to them. And I actively to this day follow that doctrine. But I think that's more so due to me thinking they're not even worth my time talking to in excess than anything else. But again, that is the only time that someone ever said anything online. Then we go, wow, that makes sense. Wow, that's innovative. I never thought of that. Other than that, never. And that was before I, you know, got to the point where I did the wide on approach one. I've said I don't have the answers to solving this problem. I just recognize it as a problem, and I try to get people to understand that when you put so much blame on 50%, because remember, you two genders, male, female. When you put so much blame on one half and let the other one get off scot free, there's an inherent issue with doing that, because we oftentimes get surprised when we see violence against women. I'm not trying to justify it, but you have to understand, when you have a society that says if you can't get with one of these, you are lesser than, you are you know inferior to, possibly even a sexuality that you've never thought of being or ever will be, by virtue of not being with a person, by virtue of that person saying, I don't want to be with you. Basically, you're going to get blamed for this person making the decision that they have the right to not be with you. Um, I mean, I can't even recall all the number of days where I had people who would try to mock me over not being with someone, or try to claim that I was homosexual. I'll never forget. I had a website I used to go to. It was kind of like a place where people go and talk to each other. And there was a woman I spoke with that I expressed this problem to, and it wasn't as bad as it is now. It's about 3, 4 years ago. Um, And she said, well, maybe you like boys. And she was so surprised by the ferocity. I didn't call her out of her name or curse or anything, but just, I bounced back against that. Said it made no sense. And she was shocked, called it testosterone, was so taken aback by my response. But it really, it was almost like in trying to think of a solution for this, she wants to create something that's not there. When I think of gay people, I think of people of the same gender holding hands, making out, not a guy on a computer talking about all the times he failed to get a woman, and certainly not someone or people rather who, just are by themselves. But by virtue of being alone, you're now a different orientation. That's kind of how screwed up the minds of people in this modern era are, and that's really played into why I don't my patience for a lot of my contemporaries is not there. You see, I've actually met people of varying ages that were able to sit down, and if they didn't get something, they made an attempt to understand it. I had a person a while back that is female that was able to, um, I think, really put a lot of the biases in favor of her gender in the trunk. You usually would associate with someone when they're not familiar with a situation, and actively try to ask me, how does this make you feel? What was that like? What do you think is going to happen? Oh, this is my position. And it was so shocking because it's literally the only instance of a woman that, is not, that is under the age of maybe 50 or 40 being able to get this problem. I said to her, you are, they make you look brilliant. I'm not, I think she's smart, but it almost was just, like some Isaac Newton thing. I couldn't believe this one person had done what so many others had failed to do. And I think a lot of older males, beyond the age of 30, 40, when they tell guys that are my age, 20s, oh, just keep trying. They don't know what it's like to grow up in the era of social media where you have so many people competing for one person, and, where you just get almost completely pushed out if you don't meet a person's entire criteria. I used to actively post on about two, I think it was, what was it, Tinder, whatever that thing was that you swipe right or left on. And I can recall there were about 20 or 30 different women I swiped. What is it, right? I didn't use it for that long, but I showed interest in, and not a single one responded. But, these are the kind of things that subtly, without much of a real indicator, say to me, they're just not into you. These just aren't my kind of women. I talked about wanting to have one partner that I meet and stay with, and we accept what is good and bad about the other, but we generally have a position that this person cares about me, they want to get to know me, and that they're understanding of who I am, and that kind of ability is lost on a majority of my contemporaries on both sides. I have very few friends. I'd say two, and that's on purpose because I've been able to um, much easier, much. I've been able to much less difficultly accept that particular small number, in terms of a type of relationship. The woman thing always perplexes me because it seems I did all of these different strategies and tactics, these tips and tricks to get people to like me, and I just got tired of it. I'm done pretending to be something I'm not. I'm done pretending like this doesn't bother me, which is why I spoke out in the first place. I'm done pretending I care what people have to say because I close off the comment section. And I made this point earlier. They tell you they're not all the same. You're only whatever age. And I always bring up the Hillary example. How many more millions of people had to show up for Clinton to win the election in spite of getting a majority of the popular vote? And how many more dozens of women do I have to talk to and get the same result from for my position that's not going to change to be vindicated? And for how many more years do I have to waste talking to these people? I kind of have this thing where I wanted to have a certain number of dates by a certain age. I wanted to get married by a certain age. Have whatever happens after that happen by a certain time. And, I realized that those things were being denied to me. They were being denied because, people have the freedom to deny them to you. I mean, let's call it what it is. If one person said we'll do it with you, this would have been over a long time ago. But I realized I wasn't getting any younger. I am not going to live forever, and I'd rather spend what little time I have in what people often call, life is too short, to doing things that I actively enjoy and that are of significance. Now, I'll be the first one to admit me not getting a woman ever, or getting married, whatever, is not the worst thing that could ever happen. We have 76% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. We have the U.S. bombing children in Yemen. 85,000 of them have starved to death or have been killed through the various airstrikes that we've had over there. The worst case of cholera in modern history. Just this humanitarian crisis. So that's way more significant than what's going on with me. But I get a lot of people like this kind of stuff. But I realized when I would sit there and I would talk to a different woman and it would get the same result. It was almost becoming like a parody of itself. Oh, I go talk to this person, they say no, I talk about how stupid they are. We move on to the next one, and it just gets tiring because I'm a person who wants to move on in life. As far as just what I know, what I do. So keeping that going wasn't really interesting to me. Um, and maybe it's interesting to somebody else, but I'm just one guy who talked to dozens and dozens of women and got the same result, and that believed for many years that if he just kept trying, it would work out, and doesn't hold that belief anymore. Um, when I said I was done, I didn't say that because I was happy. I said that because I was tired, and I still am tired. But I think if people follow this trend of just saying, all right, I'm done bothering with them, let me just, uh, if one of them comes up and speaks to me, I'll definitely, say hello or interact back. But actively pursuing them is not getting me anywhere or won't get me anywhere for the most part. I think you would see a change, but there's too few people waking up to this scam, that they'll actually be interested back in you to make a difference. We have to get to a point where there's like one person getting approached per county or state or city or whatever for there to be a substantive, real change. That change I spoke of, however, is very unlikely to happen. So we'll continue to have men that go out and talk to women. I, for one, will not waste any more hours of my life doing it, but I encourage those who want to do it to do whatever they think is best. But just be aware that this group will remain the determiners of who gets picked and who doesn't, and in the end, we all pay the price.